Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Draw Control podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by a very special guest, Beth Lyman. Beth is a former member of the USA Lacrosse Board of Directors and coaches youth lacrosse teams in Minnesota. Beth also played lacrosse and field hockey for Princeton University, where she was a captain. Beth, a former marketing executive at General Mills, and she is a current board member of Let Her Play, which is an organization empowering girls through systematic approach to increasing sport participation. Beth's daughters, Cynthia and Annie, also played and currently play NCAA lacrosse. And we're super excited to have her on the podcast. So, Beth, welcome to the Draw Control Pod. And how is everything going?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on, and thank you so much for coming on. And I guess I want to start off the podcast talking about sort of where it all began. So, how and when did you start being interested in lacrosse, and like where did you grow up? And like, I'm just curious about sort of how you started getting involved with the sport.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in the North Shore of Boston, little town called Manchester. And where I went to school, they offered field hockey, basketball, and lacrosse, and I played all of them. So I really can't remember not playing lacrosse, but it was part of kind of a multi-sport athlete. Just this is what we did when it rolled around to, after school. And so I think I started playing maybe in third or fourth grade.
Nice. And
Really
growing
early.
up, did you have any like lacrosse role models?
I was the biggest role models in lacrosse were really my coaches. As I reflect on my lacrosse experience and that of my kids, I'm just so fortunate. I've had almost exclusively female coaches throughout my youth and my high school and college. And so, while we didn't have the internet back when I was kind of a younger player, the best players and the strongest women in my life were my lacrosse coaches. So, shout out to them for
Yeah.
being a major influence in my life.
Yeah, I know a lot of players that I interview that are current players also say they're coaches as well. So it's kind of cool to see the impact that a coach can have because I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes, like I'm not a coach, but you sometimes don't realize the impact that coaches have. Like I still think about the hockey coaches that I had back in the day and what impact they helped me when I was just a kid growing up.
Yeah, I was really lucky. All of my coaches were very positive, but as a parent, seeing the flip side of how a coach can impact positively or negatively a kid's experience, their kind of comprehensive feeling about themselves and about the sport, that really kind of fueled my passion to kind of get more involved as a coach and kind of stick with that part of my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you always think about the positive stories, but there are people that quit a sport because of a coach. I've known that from just friends I've had. So it's definitely important if you want to be a coach, to sort of get involved and try to have a positive impact on an athlete's career and life as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, you played for Princeton lacrosse from 1986 to 1990. What was your experience like playing there, and what's like the best lacrosse memory you have looking back on it now at Princeton?
Mm. Um, well, playing for Princeton back when I played for Princeton, very different than how the process unfolds in today, as recruiting has taken on more and more of sort of a force of and how you get onto those teams. Back when I went to Princeton, I just applied to a bunch of schools I was interested in, and I was accepted at Princeton, and then I tried out for the team. So it's very different today. But playing lacrosse and field hockey, I played field hockey for just 1 year. Amazing. I mean, to be able to play at the highest level with amazingly smart and motivated women, it was a great experience. My first year at Princeton, we had a new coach, and her name was Chris Saylor, and she went on to coach for over 30 years, one of the longest standing NCAA coaches and most successful. So we like to say we broke her in. So she started when we started, but she was again another amazing role model for me. She had played at Harvard, and yeah, it was a great experience. I'd say the highlight though was making it to the Final Four. In just 3 short years under Chris's leadership, we went from sort of a losing type season to making it to the Final Four. And I'll just never forget that feeling walking out on the field, and you get the bag tags, and kind of the crowd is there in a significant way. And unfortunately we didn't win that game, but just being there was amazing.
Was the Final Four like held in like neutral locations when you played,
Yeah,
or
it was
was
that
it
year
like
is in Pennsylvania.
okay, okay? Because I know it's going to be played at Gillette Stadium, so now they have it like at these NFL stadiums, which is probably
Yeah.
pretty cool to see from your perspective.
Yes. Yeah, the growth has been amazing. When I played, it was very East Coast, very, very private school at the high school level. And so just, very small community.
Now, how did you balance academics and playing two sports at an Ivy League school? Because I feel like it's hard for me to balance just my academic workload as a college student. So I can't imagine what you went through,
Yeah,
balancing the academic workload, but then also having this two sports on top of that.
right. I just have always been an athlete, so it wasn't really different from my high school experience. It was just everything up a level in terms of intensity. I think it forced me to be more disciplined about how I used those hours in between classes and how do take advantage of a long bus ride to get something done. But everyone was on the same page, so it wasn't unique. It was just kind of what you do. You just got to lean into it. It was doable.
Yeah, absolutely. You've always find a way in college, I feel
Yeah,
like. Sometimes it's a bit of an all-nighter to get an assignment done, but you find a way. At least that's what
right.
I've learned.
Yeah, it's true. You just have to have a plan. Yeah, got to get this
Exactly.
done right now. Yeah.
I feel like my time management skills have improved a lot since my freshman year.
Yeah, I've noticed with my kids, they're definitely more on top of their academic game when they're in season,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is, yeah,
Now, after your playing career, when did you decide you want to be a coach and be involved with lacrosse sort of in a different capacity?
sure. So, out of Princeton, I was recruited by General Mills to work in their executive development program. So, brand management, think Cheerios, Trick Cereal. Um, that entailed a move to Minneapolis, which I had never heard of before, practically. So I landed in Minneapolis, and at that time, so early 90s, no one had really heard of lacrosse out here. So it was a bit of a rude awakening. So I kind of went head down and focused on my career. And after maybe 5 or 6 years, I started hearing about lacrosse in Minneapolis. And I really, really missed it. And someone in my neighborhood heard that I had played at the Division I level, and pretty soon I was being pulled into all sorts of things. And so coaching was the piece that really stuck with me. It was really fun, but I've always approached it as my career is over here, and then lacrosse is a way to kind of give back to the sport that I've had so much fun with. So I kind of dipped my toe into it a little bit and then found it was really fun. So started coaching at the high school level here in Minneapolis. And then when my kids got of age, so I have two boys, two girls. When my oldest Annie got to be about third grade, I stopped coaching high school and kind of went back and coached youth for her, and then all the way up through youth and club for her, and then cycled back through and did the same thing for Cynthia. She's 9 years younger. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And it's kind of weird to think about because obviously Minnesota is known as the state of hockey. And I feel like a lot of hockey players, at least here in New England, also play lacrosse as a spring sport. So it's kind of surprising that lacrosse isn't as big in Minnesota as at least back in the day, what I thought it would be.
right. I was surprised there was no field hockey here. If you're the state of hockey, where's the field
Yeah,
hockey? And there
exactly.
still is no field hockey. But yeah, there's a lot of overlap these days between hockey and lacrosse.
Now, what are some things you've learned about lacrosse and player development throughout your time being a coach that you didn't realize, I guess, during your playing career?
I think to circle back to the coaching, like as a player, I didn't realize how lucky I was to have the quality of coaches that I had. And so in my coaching years, I was largely also a parent. So I was kind of learning and growing in both of those capacities at the same time. And just to recognize that you're holding in your hand as a coach kind of the confidence and the optimism and the growth potential of kind of a young person. And the longer I coach, the more I realize it's less about the skills. That's important. You have to have those. You have to be able to teach them how to play the game and learn the rules and be smart about it and be strategic. But it's about kind of using sport as a way to kind of grow confidence and risk taking in kids. And so that's been a total eye opener for me as I've gotten to be a coach, going on 20, 30 years. It's the girls who come back and say, "Oh my gosh, you're one of my favorite coaches." And I was like, "God, I didn't know what I was doing back then." And so no, you always made it really fun and you always were so positive. And so learning that balance of how not to be positive, just a rah-rah coach, but to sort of push them, keep the bar high, but then catch them doing it right is it's pretty special. It's great.
Yeah. Well, every time I talk to like a current player, when I always like to ask, like, what do you think's been the biggest improvement you've made to your game? And it feels like a lot of players, they say their confidence is something that they've improved on throughout their time in college. And obviously, when you look at their statistics, you can sort of see how much confidence matters in sort of their playing ability. So I wanted to ask you is, how do you help an athlete manage their confidence?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's the biggest challenge for all of the girls that I've coached, my daughters included. It's the mental piece of the game. It's when something goes wrong or they make a mistake, do they let it fester and grow, or do they kind of go back to what they know, which is their skills? And so I think focusing on skills and making sure they know that they know what they're doing and to try to just focus on the process. So the process is, developing your skills, reps, believing in yourself is only possible if you've got something to fall back on and you don't start thinking about, well, what if I'm not playing well today? I used to hear that a lot from some of my younger players, and I would say, you don't get to have a bad day. Like you know what you're doing. So what? You made a mistake. Like, let's get back out there. We really need you. And I believe in you. And you should believe in you because you know what you're doing. This is just about you, the ball, the field, the players. You can control so much of that if you believe in yourself. So,
Now, you're the first coach I've ever had on this podcast, so I thought I would ask you, what is one rule change you want to add to women's lacrosse?
oh, maybe no more rules. No more rule changes, rather. I think in the time that I've played to now, we have so many more rules. And every year it seems like we are adding more rules at a pace that really is unlike any other sport. And so I think my wish would be we would slow down on the pace of rule changes. And I understand what we're trying to do is like keep the game safe, keep the game moving along. I think there's a lot of there's differences in the rules across levels. So 8U, 10U, 12U, 14U, high school is different from college. Like if we could streamline and sort of have a more comprehensive look at the rules from the beginning to the end and maybe have fewer rules, I think that would help playability. It would help the parents understand the game. It would help ease of officiating the game, I think would improve as well. But all efforts are around safety, so I certainly support that. But I do feel like we changed the rules a lot.
Yeah, I forgot which coach said this, but she was saying like we talk about how we want to make the time of game be quicker so it can make it better for a TV audience, yet we're adding some of these rules that make the game take more time to happen. So I always feel like it's interesting sort of hearing different coaches' perspectives on the rule change because I always feel like whenever a rule change happens, like a coach is probably most coaches are in favor of it, but sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah. I think last year when they made some collegiate changes, without kind of a break-in period, I don't think that was as well received. And I think this year they're using the fall season to sort of try out some new things and then solicit some feedback. I think that's a great step forward in terms of sort
Absolutely.
of slowing the pace. Let's get some
Absolutely.
feedback because there's always an unintended consequence that you don't really see or understand till you've played with it.
Well, let's talk about your time as a USA Lacrosse Board of Directors member. So from 2018 to 2024, you've been a member of USA Lacrosse Board of Directors. I just want to ask you, just talk about your role with USA Lacrosse and sort of what it entailed.
Sure. So, USA Lacrosse, as you probably know, is the national governing body for the sport. So, boys, girls. We also run the national teams, which is somewhat unique amongst national governing bodies. Uh, the role of the operating board, which is the board that I sat on, is to really oversee sort of the strategy and the financial health of the organization. I got a call in maybe 2017 from a former teammate, former Princeton teammate, Kristen Garlinghouse, and she was curious whether I'd be interested in serving. They'd been working towards sort of elevating the sort of the business acumen, I would say, of the board, sort of kind of systematically over time. And they're interested in my business expertise, particularly in branding and marketing. And so I happily agreed to serve. And it was a great experience. It was, 6 years. It was a significant commitment for sure. We meet as a board 4 times a year as the broader board of 19. And then I was on the executive committee, which is about 9 people. And that was another 6 times a year. And then on the leadership team, biweekly calls with the CEO. So the CEO is the employee of the board, and then the staff reports to the CEO. So it's really working very closely with the CEO around strategy. And we worked on Olympic inclusion. And I'm happy to report we are an Olympic sport for 2028. So
Nice.
that's big news. During my tenure as the board chair, which I did for 2 years, we had the resignation of Steve Stenerson, who had been the founding CEO of USA Lacrosse. He'd been in his seat for about 20, almost 25 years since the beginning of USA Lacrosse. So, big shoes to fill. And I got to lead that team in selecting a new CEO. And in Mark Riccia, we've found an amazing leader. He's a connector. He's very strategic, and he's got great plans to take USA Lacrosse to the next level. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell. But 6 years of service, vice chair, chair, and outgoing chair. So yeah,
Nice. I
yeah.
was going to ask you about finding the new CEO because you had to do that in the middle of COVID. I'm just curious, how did you handle the challenge of dealing with that, I guess, during a pandemic, but also like trying to find the right candidate for that position?
Yeah. Well, one of the first things we did is we reached out to a lot of community members in lacrosse. So we've got the men's game and the women's game, which, as you know, are very different. We've got youth, we've got college, we've got national teams. So we have a lot of different constituents, and we wanted to sort of get a finger in the pulse of, well, what would they be thinking would be the most critical skills for a leader to take USA Lacrosse to the next level over the next, let's say, 10 years. If we're lucky enough to get Mark for that amount of time. And so that was the first step in the process. Then we hired an executive search firm, kind of put together the job spec. And then with their help and with kind of a broader team within USA Lacrosse, we were able to interview and screen a lot of resumes and candidates. We got a lot of interest in the position, and it was a very interesting experience, because we had to balance, how much value do you put on lacrosse expertise, or do you just need strategic or sport expertise? Are you searching from within the community, or is it, open the books to really anybody with the skill set? And so we saw a lot of candidates, and we're very fortunate to have Mark. Very fortunate.
Now, like you've mentioned, I feel like you've obviously played a huge role in helping grow the game of lacrosse here in the United States. Like you mentioned, the Olympics are coming. Lacrosse is being added to the Olympics in 2028. But I wanted to ask you, what are some things that could be done to help grow the game of women's lacrosse here in the U.S.? And what are some of the barriers that you face in doing that, especially in areas like the West Coast? Because obviously, the Olympics are going to be in Los Angeles, and obviously, I know USC has a women's lacrosse program, but it feels like a lot of players that play women's lacrosse aren't from the West Coast or from certain areas of the United States. So I'm
Right.
curious if USA Lacrosse is doing anything to sort of help grow women's lacrosse in sort of areas where it's not as known.
Yeah, that's a longstanding initiative to grow the game for both boys and girls. But girls are underrepresented relative to boys, which is true across really probably every sport, certainly most sports. I think one of the challenges we have in the sport is that its origins are in, private school, Northeast, predominantly white. And what we are trying to do is to make lacrosse a sport that is really not only for everyone, but is welcoming to everybody. And those are sort of two pieces of the puzzle is you need to expose the sport to more people. And then if you get new players in, make sure that they're having a fantastic experience. So that speaks to the coaches and the culture that we're creating within our teams. And so one of the biggest things we can do is put sticks in kids' hands. So we have a National Try Lacrosse Week, which is one of our more recent initiatives, but we have long-standing grant programs where schools can get sticks for a PE program within a school. Leagues can say, hey, I really need help with equipment, or I need funds to expand and grow. But we really try to work very closely with our league partners to make sure that the growth is sort of smart and strategic. You don't want to give sticks to kids that don't have access to a program, for example. You don't want to get them all excited and then there's no place to play. So we talk about pathways to play and really making sure that we've got the right role models in place and really trying hard to expand the sport outside of sort of its more traditional socioeconomic groups, because it really is a sport for everyone.
So we've talked about your playing career, your time as a coach, and obviously your time with the USA, with USA Lacrosse. But now I want to ask you some questions about being a mom because obviously you have two daughters who have had or ha who've had and are having successful lacrosse careers. So what's it been like as a mom to see Cynthia and Annie's success, I guess, in lacrosse? Because I feel like it's cool to see your own success, but I feel like as a parent, it must be even cooler to see your kids have the same amount of success that you had with the sport.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. It's fun watching your kids do their thing, no matter what it is. It's one of the greatest joys as a parent is to sort of see your kid in their element. And so it doesn't really matter what they're doing, but if it's lacrosse, it's extra fun for me, for sure, to share that passion for the game. And as I mentioned before, I've been able to coach the girls and get to know their friends, particularly at the youth level. It's just been so fun to see them grow as people and see them kind of interact as teammates, particularly when they're young. As they got older, I really just did their little bit of club coaching and kind of stayed out of their high school experience by design. But I'm incredibly proud of them as people and as players. But there's just absolutely nothing more fun than for me to watch my girls play lacrosse. So
Yeah, Cynthia was telling me a funny story when we had her on the podcast. She was saying like it was hard to sort of separate you as a coach and as a mom because like during practice sometimes she would ask you like what's for dinner that night. I just thought that was a funny story, so I thought I'd share that with you. But what makes Cynthia and Annie great lacrosse players and people from your perspective?
uh, I think as people, they are independent and they're confident. And I think a lot of that they got from their sports, and they both have played more than just lacrosse. As lacrosse players, I think they've got athleticism for sure, but I think they have a passion for the game and an eye for the game. They've got lacrosse IQ through the roof. They can see the play unfolding. I think they'll make great coaches someday. I hope that they consider giving back in that way. I'm a little biased. I'm their mom, but they're they're both very strong players, and they love it.
Mhm.
And that matters. The passion to put in the extra time and set goals for yourself and just really want it. You can't coach that.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
you're not being biased. Cynthia and Annie are both great players, and I haven't met Annie, but I've met Cynthia, and she's really nice as well. So I just want to let you know that. So it's you did a great job raising
Thank
Cynthia
you.
and the rest of your kids as well.
Thanks.
So let's move on to a segment I like to call five questions that have nothing to do with sports. And the goal of this segment is to get to know you more, I guess, off the field or out of lacrosse, I guess. And I'll give you some of my answers as well to make it a fun
Good.
conversation. So first one is if there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself?
Okay. Um, okay, there's probably not going to be a movie made about me, but I guess I would say probably Jennifer Aniston because I think she's kind of fun and
Mhm.
she's got good hair and maybe a little too much on the Botox, but I've always liked her and I loved Friends. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if I don't know any actors that look like me, so it'll be kind of tough. So I always just go with like Ryan Gosling just because it'd
Oh,
be
that he's a
funny
good
to
one.
play me in a movie because obviously we look nothing alike. It would just be funny for the audience to imagine someone who's like 10 times better looking than me playing me.
Oh yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah.
So I think that would be my answer. I think that would be a lot
That's
of
a good
fun.
one.
And he seems like a good dude too, so that
Yes,
helps.
yes.
Now, what has been the most interesting thing you've read or seen recently?
I just read The Rose Code. It's a book. I don't know if you've heard of it. I think the author is Kate Quinn, but it's about a bunch of women code breakers in World War II. And yeah, it was really great. It was amazing to see the differences in how women are treated just in such a short period of time. It made me very happy that my daughters are growing up when they're growing up now with all their opportunities in
Yeah.
terms of business and athletics.
That's definitely a good book. I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
My answer is probably not as good as yours. In music today, we learned about the Beach Boys and how they made the album Pet Sounds, and it was pretty innovative how they sort of made that album just because they really used a lot of studio techniques that hadn't been used before. So I thought it was pretty interesting because I didn't really think of the Beach Boys as like an innovative type of band,
Right.
but it was really cool to see them make that album. Yeah, I thought it was really good. It was a good album too. I like some of the songs that the
Good. I'll
professor
have to
played.
check that out. I like the Beach Boys.
Yeah, oh, yeah, they had some good songs. I like God Only Knows. That was probably my favorite one that they played. Now, next non-lacrosse question is if you could play a game with any professional sports team in the world, who would you pick?
Does that mean I can't pick lacrosse?
It could be, I guess you could pick a professional lacrosse team.
Okay, good. I think oh, professional sports team. I guess there's AU Pro. To be honest, I would play AU Pro just to play lacrosse.
Oh yeah, that's a good
And to
answer.
and to be that good would
Oh
be
yeah.
would be a dream. Yeah.
I would say the Bruins, big hockey fan. It's super
Yes.
cool to be on an AHL team. It looks like a lot of fun. So that's what I would go with.
I know Cynthia would probably pick Minnesota Wild.
Yeah.
What do you think
E
they would pick? Yeah.
either the Bruins or like Red Sox, like a Boston sports team. That would just be cool to
Yeah.
be on that. So
Mhm.
next one is what is one thing outside of lacrosse that you're passionate about?
Oh, outside lacrosse, I would just say, I guess girls and their development, and that isn't really completely outside of lacrosse, but I've gotten very passionate about coaching in general and giving girls opportunities in sport, and it doesn't really matter what sport. So maybe that's an illegal answer to your question, but
It's fine. I'm not these very light rules for this segment. So
yeah, good. I like the light rolls. Yeah, I've been digging in a lot to the correlation between girls in sports and leadership. And we're so far behind in young and youth girls, and they're dropping out at a rate 2 to 1 to boys. And so I'm really I'm hopeful with some of the new research that's coming out that people will prioritize getting their girls into sports. And that doesn't mean elite sports. It just means play, be on the team and learn what you learn with sports. So I'm very passionate about that.
yeah.
So it's different from coaching, but it's tangential.
Yeah, I get that. I would say for me, like photography, I like going out to different spots and taking photos of it. I've been trying to learn. So that would be my sort of passion outside of like, I guess sports in general. I would say outside of lacrosse, like hockey and baseball, those are two sports I like to watch and talk about all the time.
Yeah, a lot of that happening in our house.
Oh,
Hockey and baseball. Yeah.
well, hockey season just started, so I could imagine it's been a fun season already. And it's only been not
Yes.
even a week. So
Yeah. We're big Wild fans.
Okay, okay. Do you think
Mhm.
Kirill Kaprizov's going to leave? I assume that's sort of the big conversation
I hope not.
constantly
He's
coming up.
so good.
Yeah, I hope not too, because I think it's cool when different players, you have a star in every team. I think it makes the league better. But I'm
Yeah.
glad Jeremy Swayman signed, so I don't have to worry about any sort of big contracts for the Bruins coming up in the next couple of years, it feels like.
Yeah. You don't want to lose the good guys.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Now let's get back to some lacrosse questions now. I guess what advice would you give younger lacrosse players about what they have to do to be in a position to be recruited by an NCAA team?
Mm. I would say try not to think about that when you're playing youth. Just work really, really hard and try to outwork everybody. And if that doesn't sound appealing, then maybe that's not the sport for you. But I think the older I get, the more I realize it's not about where you're ending up. It's about the journey along the way. And so play the sports you love, play them for as long as you can. And I think the results will come if you follow your passion and you just work hard.
Now, who are some of your favorite lacrosse players that you like to watch now?
I love watching Charlotte North. She is electric, and I love the creativity and the innovation that she's brought to the game. I mean, she's got the skills, but she's got energy. Now she's an announcer, but you still get to watch her play on AU Pro. So yeah, she's definitely one of my favorites. Um, Belle Smith is another favorite of mine. It seems like the era of the true two-way midfielder is waning as people get kind of smarter about, cutting up shifts and but I love seeing her, she can score, she can defend, she can, run down the ground ball and keep up with everybody on a dead sprint. So I think understand having played and coached that position, it's so difficult to be excellent on both ends of the field. So she's amazing.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I'm kind of biased because I just started watching the sport like a couple of years ago, but Izzy Skane was always fun to
Yeah.
watch on TV, so I'm gonna miss watching her in college. Madison Taylor was another underrated player too on that Northwestern team, and then
Yep.
since I'm a draw control guy, I gotta go with Liz Harrison from Florida. She was always fun to watch.
Oh, I
She was
gotta
really
watch
good
her
at
a
the
little bit
draw.
better. Yeah,
Oh
the draw.
yeah, yeah. So I guess one last question I want to ask you, Beth, is do you have any shout outs you want to give and things you want to promote and who should we have on the podcast next?
Um, I guess I would shout out to all the girls that I've coached. I love every single one of them. It's been an honor coaching them and seeing them grow and develop. Now I've got players that now run clubs. I've got players that have kids. It's it's fun to have been part of their journey. So shout out to them. Um, what was the other one?
Like anything you want to promote and who should we have on next?
Oh, promote. I want to promote Let Her Play, which is the nonprofit organization. I sit on their board, and it was started by our fellow Princetonian, even though she's a lot younger than I am. But Gia Frashone, what she's doing is she's connecting girls to college athlete role models, and she brings girls into college campuses, and they watch college athletes play, and she kind of gets them excited, show them what's possible, and she's just on fire and she's doing amazing work and she's got Princeton, Northwestern, she's got BC, and that's just the beginning of what she's doing. So if you're interested in getting more girls in sports, check out letherplay.org, give her a follow. And then who should you have on the podcast next? I was thinking the current board chair of USA Lacrosse, Sarah Bullard McDaniel. She is a young mom. She is I believe, a five-time national champion. She played for Duke, and she's got a Harvard MBA. She's smart as a tack, and she has probably a lot of insight to lend to sort of where USA Lacrosse is going next and sort of plans for the 2028 Olympics. So she'd be a fun one to have.
Well, Beth, we've had you on the podcast. We've had Cynthia. When's Annie coming on? So we can complete the whole family. Or if you have any nieces or nephews that play, we'll definitely try to get them.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll talk to Annie. We'll see. She's hung up her stick for now, but yeah, she's a fun one, but we'll see. Maybe we'll get her coaching.
Okay, sounds good. We talk to former players sometimes, so it'll be fun to sort of reminisce about the Trinity lacrosse days. I bet you it was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, she had a great time at Trinity. She started off at Denver and transferred. So
yes.
that's an interesting angle to her story too. But yeah, yeah.
Well, Beth, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think you're a great person, and it was an honor again, the chance to meet and talk with you today. It means a lot. So, wishing you all the best for any future endeavors you might have, and obviously, I wish Cynthia a great freshman year.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.